Well, the idea of precognition, of sort of knowledge beforehand, knowledge before the fact, it's been around for quite some time. One of the classic examples is of the 18th century Swedish scientist and religious thinker Emanuel Swedenborg. Swedenborg was one of the most well-known scientists of the time. He wrote a lot about the brain and about the nervous system. But he also wrote a great deal about mystical experience. He himself wrote accounts of journeys that he took to places like heaven and hell, and a place he called the spirit world, which was this intermediate realm. But Swedenborg's name turns up in most accounts of the paranormal and most histories of things like precognition. And there's a famous example when he was in Sweden, and he was in a different city. He was visiting people, and he was at a dinner, and high-ranking nobles and aristocrats are around at this dinner with him, and suddenly he stands up, and he becomes shocked still, and doesn't say anything, and walks out of the room, and people come after him. They ask him, like, well, what's the matter? And he says, a fire has just broken out in Stockholm, which is something like 300 miles away. And as you know, there's no telephones, there's no means of him to have known anything at that time. And he goes on in great detail about where the fire is started, where it's going, what they're doing to try and stop it and all that. And then at the end of this, he sort of says, okay, and he breathes this sigh of relief, and he says, well, it just stopped just before my house. And a couple days later, a writer comes from Stockholm and announces the news. And it's precisely what Swedenborg had said. And there's another incident which may not be exactly precognition, but Swedenborg was, again, he was welcome in many of the courts, many of the noble places in Europe at the time, and he was with the Queen of Sweden, Christina. And Swedenborg was known for giving these accounts of visiting the spirit world and heaven and hell and all that. And the Queen kind of jokingly said something to him about, well, have you come across my brother, while on your journeys? And he said, no, I haven't, Your Highness, but if you'd like me to, I will. And she said, oh, sort of jokingly, well, please do, and give him my regards and all that. And the next time he was at court, he approached the Queen and he said, oh, by the way, I've actually had a word with your brother the other day, and he said X, Y and Z. And the Queen was astonished because this was something that only she and her brother knew. Another famous incident with precognition is in the early 1920s. There was a fellow named J.W. Dunn who wrote a book called Experiment with Time. And Dunn discovered that by keeping a dream journal, he realized that he had dreamt the future. And this is actually one of the easiest ways for people to find out whether precognition actually happens. And I did this myself. I kept a dream journal for many, many years. And I did exactly what Dunn said to do. I would write my dreams down as soon as I got up. And I would sort of keep another kind of journal, everyday sort of thing. And after a while, I would look at the two, and I would realize that there would be many, many little items. It wasn't like picking the winners at the race courses or something like that, or who was going to win the election. It was sort of incidental, kind of mundane sorts of things. But you would see that in my dreams, little items would turn up that would turn up later in the actual journal, actual day-to-day sort of thing. So Dunn argued that in some way, the dreaming mind, the dreaming self, it's lifted out of the sort of mundane kind of sequential series of time, and it can sort of rise above that and sort of look at the whole sort of stream of time, back and future, past and future, simultaneously. And somehow elements from the future get mixed up into sort of dreaming about the past as well, and also things that are happening in your present. And oftentimes these precognitive elements come in symbolic form. They might not be exactly what they might not be exact sort of replicas of what's actually going to happen, but they're close enough to indicate that there's actually something taking place. And I think that, as I said, this is something that most people, if they just took the trouble to sort of write their dreams down over a long period of time, a few months at least, they'll start to see that little bits of future events turn up in their sleeping consciousness.